Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. Today, we are going to be talking about something that most teams are dealing with, but very few have actually solved. Uh, Essentially, the governance gap and AI-assisted software development. By the end of this session, you will have a clear framework of what the gaps look like, why it is dangerous, and how we can close it. I think we can move forward. A little about myself. My name is Usman Nadeem, and I'm the founder and CEO of MatrixTribe Technologies. I have a long experience building software across startups, enterprise teams, and everything in between. We are an AI augmented software delivery firm. We help startups, SMBs build faster without sacrificing governance, quality, and reliability. What I'm sharing today is what we are seeing in the front lines in the delivery work. Moving on to the agenda. What I'll be covering today, I'm actually dividing that in two parts. The first part is talking more about where we are today in AI coding revolution, the rise of vibe coding, the governance gap that it is introducing that we're seeing, and the real world failures that we are experiencing. And then we have the development risks that I'll be introducing, and then governance principles, Matrix Tribe, who we are, and the GRACE framework that I will be introducing today. So, first of all, let's talk about the world that we're living in, AI coding revolution. For the first time, for the first time in history of software engineering, generating code is no longer the hard part. So, Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, uh, and now we have Cloud Cowork and other tools. They are now standard tools for all the teams. Everybody's using them. So the pressure from leadership generally is to adopt AI, and that is immense. But here's what has changed. The bottleneck used to be writing code. Now the bottleneck is everything else. Basically, understanding it, governing it, making it reliable. So that is the bottleneck. The speed is no longer the hard part. Challenges. So, what are the real challenges? So, four things most teams are not addressing today. First of all, understanding. Code is shipped that nobody can explain. No human can actually explain what was written and can go and modify that. In governance, there's no policies for what AI can touch, what data it can see, or who owns the output. There's a policy vacuum. Number three, reliability. AI-generated code introduces subtle failures that standard review processes were never designed to catch. So the standard review processes were built around human development, which has its own issues, but that is more around the logical errors. But in AI-generated code, we have a different set of issues. So architecture, number four, without human oversight, code bases drift. Consistency disappears and you end up with technical debt, a lot of technical debt, and technical debt at machine speed. Moving on, rise of vibe coding. This is actually the specific behavior that is creating most of the risk. Uh, so there, in vibe coding, we have in vibe coding, the workflow that developers are actually adopting. There are four steps to that. So first step, describe the feature in plain language. Step two, AI generates the implementation. Step three, we test it, feed errors back, refine, keep prompting until everything works. And step four is ship it fast without often deep review of what was actually generated. There's nothing wrong with this workflow on its face. This problem is the missing governance layer between generation and deployment. So, uh, why developers love it? Developers genuinely love it. The features that used to take days now take hours. So junior developers can produce output that used to require senior level developers. And obviously leadership loves it too because of the speed. But here's the tension. The tension comes because vibe coding optimizes for speed, but not for speed of creation, but not for really system reliability. Reliability is now becoming a problem. When nobody fully understands what was built, speed becomes the fastest path to failure. Now, before I move on, I would like to ask anybody in the audience who can actually raise hands and tell me if they have shipped code recently that they do not fully understand or they did not understand at all. Is there anybody? You can raise hands. There is a hand raise in Teams that you can use. Okay, we have a very disciplined audience today. Nobody raised hands. Let us move on. So AI governance gap. This is this is actually the core concept of today's talk. So uh, this is what every team has. Like we have the tools, we have pipelines, we have the speed, but we lack the AI aware development processes. We lack the guardrails, we lack the architectural oversight. Nobody deliberately chose to be ungoverned, obviously. But the problem is that we are using AI with workflows that were built for human written code. So human written code and AI outputted code are two different things. So they need different processes, but we are actually bolting on the same review process on the AI output. So that's causing the problem essentially. The teams move fast, but they move in the wrong direction. And that compounds the technical debt, that compounds the problem with every sprint. Capability versus reality. So if I had to put this in a chart, this is what I would say. AI code generation is very mature. Speed is solved. Like you don't really have a problem with the speed of generation. AI governance is missing, largely missing. We don't have standards, we don't have policies, we don't have review frameworks built for AI output. And then AI security and compliance, that is also missing. Most teams have never asked the question, what data are we actually allowed to put in a prompt? So the gap between what AI can do and the processes that govern it, that is where the risk lives. What this means for you. If your team is using AI tools without governance framework, you already have a gap. It's a process gap essentially. So this is not a risk that you have sometime in the future. The risk is today. It's a present gap. The good news is that governance does not really cause you to slow down. You're not talking about the software development of 2020, but it makes the speed sustainable. So this is exactly what Grace framework is built to do, which we'll be talking about later. Now, uh, let us let us see what this behavior has caused in real world, like the kind of failures that we are seeing in real world because of lack of governance. The failures that I'm going to be talking about, they are the real world failures. They are not some things that just happened and we are making those things up. They're the real world failures. So let's talk about them. First one, AWS US East 1 outage. This wasn't long ago, maybe early this year or later last year, last few months. So what happened? A misconfigured automated deployment script triggered a cascading failure that took down a large portion of AWS US East 1. Major platforms, including Slack and GitHub, were unavailable for hours, and thousands of other production applications. So the root cause, again, automation moved faster than the guardrails. One ungoverned change propagated before anybody could intervene. One misconfiguration caused a global incident because automation lacked governance. That's a lesson. Another one, lovable platform. We all love it. This one hits home, right? Because we're all using it to uh, this AI assisted platform to actually build a lot of apps. So over 170 production apps built on Lovable were exposed because of row-level security and super-based tables. Full database exposure. So user data, authentication info, uh, business data, everything was accessible with public key. You didn't really need to hack into the system. Everything was just available. Why did it happen? AI built the application. Nobody reviewed the code. Nobody reviewed the security layer, where whether it was configured or not, the code worked, but again, the governance layer was not there, so it did not work. So one missing governance step again. Another one, T-app. This one is harder to read because of who it affected, but like it's a woman's dating safety app exposed uh, 72,000 images, including 13,000 government ID photos. So what happened? Fiber storage was left completely open with default settings, no authorization policies applied, nobody hacked them. The data was just sitting open. Anybody with a URL could actually go access it. So 13,000 government IDs, zero security configuration. This is vibe coding without governance in production. So if you are using vibe coding, you better be aware. So let's talk about the common thread across these three incidents. There are many others, but I just picked three. Uh, None of them were hacking incidents. They were all governance failures. So technology worked just as it was supposed to. But the problem is that the people who were using technology to build it, they did not use it the right way. So in every case, AI or automation moved faster than human oversight. Nobody paused to ask, like, did we govern it? Do we know what we're shipping? AI amplifies. So if you have problems in your engineering processes, AI is essentially going to be amplifying those. So if you have weaknesses, AI is going to be amplifying those. So without a governance framework, every team is essentially one deployment away from being on the news and not in the good way, right? Everybody wants to be in the news, but we want to be there in a good way on our own terms. So let us break down the specific categories of risks that govern addresses. Risk number one, hidden technical debt. AI generates large volumes of code and at a very fast pace. But the problem is that without oversight, it creates technical debt that compounds very fast, but silently. So what it causes is inconsistent architecture. Different developers are prompting differently, producing structurally incompatible outputs. We have duplicate patterns problems. AI is rewriting the patterns that are already there just because it doesn't really have the entire preview of the code base sometimes. And the code base basically grows fast, ages badly, and maintainability collapses sprint by sprint. So every sprint is essentially compounding the problem. So risk number two, code comprehension. Developers ship code they did not fully write. When something breaks, nobody can actually go and fix it, which essentially means that incident response is slow, dramatically slow, because the person on call did not write the failing code. As a matter of fact, nobody wrote it. Nobody knows what was written. Nobody knows how to go in and debug. Critical business logic lives inside AI generated code that no human can understand or no human understands and can modify safely. You cannot govern what you do not understand, right? So if you want an engineering team to be accountable, first of all, it has to be comprehensive. It has to have the comprehension of what they did. So comprehension is the foundation of accountability. We don't really have that here. Risk number three, security and compliance. AI models are trained on public code. They reproduce insecure patterns and would use outdated libraries and would introduce known vulnerabilities without warning. So essentially, if if an LLM was trained 6 months ago or 1 year ago, 2 years ago, the problems that it saw at that time or the libraries that it saw at that time, which might have known vulnerabilities by the point you are using it, it's going to be using those libraries. Now, essentially, that makes your code insecure anyway, right? And then there's a licensing risk. So AI generated code can use GPL snippets, and then we have those lovable and TApp incidents, right? They were not really anomalies. They were essentially a preview of what an ungoverned AI delivery looks like, but at a scale, obviously. So this is a compliance and security risk. And there's fourth risk, which is a deployment risk. AI generated changes are large. A single prompt can produce hundreds of lines of code. This essentially means that the blast radius grows and it grows very fast with the ungoverned changes going in. So failure probability increases when code reviewers cannot deeply understand what they're approving. AI ships fast, but leaves systems that are harder to monitor, roll back, or debug under pressure. Now let's talk about, we've talked about the problems, we've defined the problem. Uh, let's talk about what AI native governance looks like. What does a good look like, right? There's a way to solve it. There are some certain principles that we can adopt to actually uh, resolve the problem or address the problem. So let's talk about that. Principle number one, AI generates, engineers govern. So AI accelerates implementation. That is its job. Use it for what it is good at. But humans are responsible for architecture, design, and reliability. That responsibility we cannot really delegate to a model. So if you're using AI without really understanding what it's doing, what it's causing in terms of architectural drift, that's a problem. So humans have to be responsible. They have to be in the driving seat. When you're, if you own a Tesla car and you're driving with FSD on, you still need a driving license, right? If you're flying a commercial airliner with autopilot, you still need a pilot license. So essentially the same concept comes in here. So every AI generated line needs a human owner who understands it, can defend it, and can modify it safely. Think of it this way. AI is a power tool. Power tools do not really replace engineers, they essentially multiply the output that an engineer can produce. Principle number two, guardrails before code generation. So most teams run this framework. So the developer would talk to AI would create an output, and then that will go to deploy. So governance is always an afterthought. After the deployment has happened, then we talk about governance. Oh, did we do it right? So governed teams run. So developer to essentially it has to be developer to governance to AI to review to deploy. The governance and reviewing have to be in there. That's very important. When we talk about guardrails, we talk about including hygiene policies like prompt hygiene policies, data classification rules, what sort of data can go in prompts, what sort of data cannot go in prompt, right? Compliance issues. And then approved tools, tool standards essentially, what tools you can use, what you cannot use. So you cannot really bolt governance into a system that is already deployed. It cannot be retrofitted. It cannot be like an afterthought. It has to be within the workflow. That's a theme of it, right? Then the third thing. So structured AI code review. So traditional code review is designed to check code logic, the functional part of it, right? AI code review must check something harder, architectural fit. So you are still checking for logic because AI is hallucinating. There are issues that can be introduced with AI, logical issues, but there's also another thing, which is the architectural fit, the drift. There are three questions that every AI code review should answer. Does this output align with how the rest of the system is built? Number two, does it introduce insecure patterns or misconfigured defaults? And number three, can a human safely modify this 6 months from now? This third thing is very important. Like who, if there's a developer here, if there's a developer watching this one, recording anything, you know very well what this means. We know that it's easier to modify code today, code that we wrote yesterday, or maybe from last week. But anything before that, we just forget. This has happened to me. This has happened to everybody. Anybody who's written code knows this problem. Principle number four, full visibility. So teams need to know where AI generated code exists in their code base. Right now, most do not. We don't. We have AI generated code, but we don't really know where it is. We're not, the awareness is not there, right? So I'm not saying that AI generated code is dirty code, but if everything is jumbled up, so the ownership is not very clear. So full visibility essentially means what was generated, who generated the code, which engineer developer generated the code, what was the prompt that was used to generate the code, and who reviewed it. We need the entire trail, right? Because when an incident happens in production, you need to be able to trace the origin of failure back to the specific decision. Like what was the decision? What was the reason why we actually injected this code? So visibility is not essentially an overhead. It's the difference between response. I wrote this response and chaos, but it's basically whether you can respond to failure or you cannot. Now, I want to talk about the way the future of software engineering looks, the industry reframe, right? So how the industry is reframing or where the industry is moving towards. And I would then leave you with this would lead us to what MatrixTribe is doing. So everyone talks about AI making developers faster. This is true, but it is not the most important change AI is bringing to the industry. The biggest change is the need for stronger development governance. Speed without discipline creates compounding risk. You can drive fast, you can have a bigger engine, you can push the accelerator, drive fast, but if you don't know how to hold the steering, if you don't know how to use the brakes, you're going to somewhere other than the road, right? So you don't want to do that. The question is no longer can we build faster? It's more about responsibly building at machine speed. Now, talking about what winning teams are doing. So, winning teams are using AI effectively in a way that they're using the right tools, pretty much standard tools, but the right prompts, standards applied consistently across every developer. So, the entire engineering teams are using AI in a very standard, cohesive way, like in a very uniform way. Uh, it's not like different standard for every developer. It's not the same. Like, it's a team-wide discipline that is enforced. So governance frameworks, code ownership, review processes, everything's designed around AI output, not just human output. AI changes, so the processes have to evolve. The AI changes what the job looks like, right? So winning teams redesign their workflows around the reality. Companies that win will not be the ones that will generate the most code. Uh, that problem is solved. Uh, the ones that win, they'll be the ones that govern the best. Now, I would like to introduce MatrixTribe and how MatrixTribe aspires to address this problem. So, if AI is now part of development processes, we need systems designed to govern it. This is exactly what MatrixTribe builds. We help teams integrate AI safely, defining what your team can use, how they use the prompt, what policies govern every generation. Consistency, essentially, architectural drift, those things. So we maintain architectural discipline. Our delivery framework ensures AI output fits your system, not the other way around. It's not like your system has to adapt to the AI output. You have to define the architecture, you have to define the system, and then use AI to actually fill in those things. That is where you can actually effectively use AI to get to where you want to get, not where AI is taking you. So you have to be in control essentially. So we manage AI generated code risks, full visibility, structured reviews, and traceability built into every engagement from day one. What we provide, three things we bring to every client engagement: AI-aware development workflows. Your team moves fast using AI inside a structured process that prevents the failure we covered today. And then Grace framework that we'll be talking about very soon. Let's apply to your code base, your team, delivery process. Risk visibility for AI generated code. You know where AI touched your system, what it introduced, and who owns it. So speed and governance are not a trade-off. They are a system. This is the matrix like promise. Moving on. Now let me introduce you to the Grace framework. So the Grace framework is a practical tool we use to close the governance gap. This is something that you can take away from today. It's essentially five gaps and five principles. First gap is G for stands for grasp, R for review, A for access control, C for consistency, and E for explainability. Uh, and for each of them, I can actually go in a bit of a detail. Uh, so yeah, the first one, grasp. Developers are shipping code they do not understand or they have not written. They have not written, I can understand, but they do not understand. They do not own it. So for when production breaks at 2 a.m., nobody can go and debug it confidently. So speed of generation has essentially outpaced the depth of understanding. This is the gap of grasping. So the matrix type principle, every AI generated line needs a human owner who can explain it, defend it, and modify it. Gap number two, review. Traditional review processes were designed for humans writing intentional code. It was never designed for AI volume and architectural drift. So standard uh, pull request processes like PR processes, they are, as I said earlier, they catch logical errors, but they do not talk about the structural decay that it's getting caused with AI. So the kind that essentially compounds over months. So matrix type principle is to add a review layer for architectural fit, so for architectural discipline. So we maintain consistency, not just logic. The third one is access control. So this is the gap with the highest legal and reputational exposure. This is something that we talked about earlier in the lovable and T-app thing incident. So teams that are feeding business logic, API keys, customer data into AI tools with no policy governing what is allowed. So most teams have never asked the question, what are we allowed to put in a prompt? And I can tell you that this is a big problem, especially in regulated industries. Uh, so principle that we have or that we would be using or we use is before any tool touches a project, a data classification and prompt hygiene policy must exist. We know exactly what data we can use for prompting and what data we cannot. And then moving on to this fourth gap, consistency. So if you have 10 developers in the same project, each prompting differently produce architecturally incompatible outputs. So obviously that would add pressure on the review layer or the governance framework. We don't want the speed to suffer, right? So it's important to have consistency. The code base, if we are not consistent, the code base will become a patchwork of AI styles with no coherent identity. Technical debt compounds with every sprint. So in order to solve that, so we should have team-wide prompt libraries and output standards to eliminate the consistency gap. Gap number five, explainability. There's no audit trail. This is very, very important. When something breaks in production, teams cannot determine what was AI generated and what was human generated. Now, this becomes even important when we are talking about the regulated industries, for example, finance or somewhat healthcare or a few others, where compliance is a big problem. Even in network communication, where I've spent a long time, compliance is very, very important. So auditors uh, ask basically who wrote the code. Uh, you cannot say the prompt wrote the code, Claude wrote the code, I didn't write the code, go sue Claude. You can't do that. So humans have to own it. So essentially, the principle is that we should have full AI traceability. What was generated, who generated it, what was the prompt used for generating it, and who reviewed it. We need the entire trail. Everything has to be there, and the entire process needs human ownership. So this talks about the fifth gap of explainability. So yeah, uh, this is the message I want you to take away from today. Governance and speed are not really in conflict. Governed teams deliver faster because they do not spend time recovering from ungoverned failures. They do not really keep going back to the same thing again and again, and they don't really have to spend all that time fixing things that they did 5 months ago. So govern better and deliver faster. Thank you. So thank you for being here today. I generally appreciate that. Now the floor is open for questions. If you're asking it, someone else is in the room, so they can also benefit. If you want to go deeper, MatrixTribe.ai, book a free consultation, and we can do a AI governance audit for you uh, without any commitments. No payments required for that. So, any questions? Anything? We have a Q&A section here. Let's wait for one more minute. So it's often said that should AI, there's few questions that I actually wrote that are essentially frequently asked questions. So let me actually give you one or two. So should junior developers be using AI tools? Because this is a question that is getting asked a lot in the industry. Uh, Recently, I was talking to somebody and they said we're not hiring junior developers anymore. So yeah, I don't think that you don't need junior developers. I think the development hierarchy is still required. Essentially, if there's no junior developer today, there won't be a senior developer tomorrow. So you still need junior developers, but guardrails are very important. Like you have to have stronger governance there in order to make sure that the process is better. So whether it's a junior or senior developer, That does not matter. What matters is the process. And the AI generated code reviews, they have to be stronger. Uh, Another thing that is often mentioned is that developers are going to be replaced. I don't really think so. Developers are going to be replaced completely, but obviously, you may need a smaller headcount in some situations. But senior developers are still going to be required. Senior engineers, architects are still going to be required because you need to make architectural decisions. You need to make reliability decisions. You need ownership, system ownership. Like say things can break, you need people to actually go in. Responsibilities require human judgment, right? So those things. Anyway, I don't think there's any question here, so I think we'll end it here. But I'll just mention that there are three guardrails that I would say that you can take away from here today. Number one is the data classification policy that you should all have in your companies. Second, the prompt library to bring in consistency. And thirdly, code ownership rule. Like every AI generated line must have a named human owner before it ships. So if anything breaks, there's somebody to actually go in and fix it or own it. Uh, so yeah, you can actually ask a question. There is a question. Yeah, Julie has a question. So Julie, would you like to? So Julie, can you type in the question? Speed to market is critical these days. How are you incorporating AI within the development process? Speed to market is critical. This is true. There is no question around it. But what we're saying is that without uh, without without doing away speed, you can still build sustainably. So there is governance doesn't really slow down the process. Governance just makes the speed sustainable. Sustainable such that the technical debt doesn't grow. Whatever you're building is good for production. Uh, Whatever goes in the market doesn't really have to be taken off because something big happened, some big issue happened or something like that. So speed, we recognize the speed. AI development is essentially helping with that, but we have to be in control. That's the main thing. So sustainable development speed is important. I hope that answered the question. Anything else? Okay, maybe no. Thank you very much. I think we can end it sooner, 40 minutes, or maybe getting 40 minutes back. Thank you very much.